Hey, this is Camille Trail for John Broughton on Retrospectives on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
He's walking down the street. He looks just like you and me.
So you're on a bit of a road trip at the moment, are you?
I am, yeah. I had my tour dates up in Cairns, so unfortunately the second date got cancelled due to the snap lockdown in Cairns. But yeah, I quit my job for the tour, and the tour seemed like it's not really going ahead anymore. So I figured now that I have no tour and I'm unemployed, I may as well keep going and have a road trip.
Yeah, why not? Why not? All right, well, before we talk about this new record, although you're at the moment now, all recording artists only get to experience once, and that is the release of a debut full-length album. So I imagine it's a pretty exciting time for you, just the same.
Yeah, it's so exciting. It's also it's really like a roller coaster of emotions. You kind of are really excited, and then you're kind of terrified, and they're like, oh my God, what if people don't like it and it doesn't go well, and you think that it's going to be the end of the world, but you know in your head it's not. But yeah, I'm going through the roller coaster emotions at the moment.
Let's just talk a little bit about your background before we talk about the album specifically, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Tell us about your beginnings in music, where the initial love sprang from, and at what point did you decide it was something you wanted to make a career out of?
Yeah, so growing up, I grew up in a very musical family, not so much where my parents were playing instruments, but they really just loved and appreciated music, and they would always listen to music every morning. I'd walk out and my dad would be just in a pile of CDs just stacked everywhere playing music. And then I started playing the piano when I was 8, and I did about 10 years of piano lessons, and I always sang, but it was always just something I really enjoyed, and it was kind of a release for me and how I kind of dealt with my feelings and emotions and all of that sort of thing. And then I went to high school, and that's when I discovered that you can actually do that as a career. And I thought, whoa, like that would be really cool. If I can have a career in music, I'm never going to have to work a day in my life. So yeah, so it went from there. So high school was really the first point where I was like, okay, let's take this a bit more seriously.
So what kind of music was on the playlist in the household growing up?
We listened to actually a really big range of music. We listened to a lot of like 60s to 80s music. It was all like Fleetwood Mac and Creedence and John Mellencamp and all of those kind of guys. And then we also listened to music kind of like Chuck Berry and like Buddy Holly and all of that kind of. There's that artist like Daddy Cool who sings that Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep song?
No, that was Daddy Dewdrop.
Yeah. So we listened to all of that kind of music and like Tanya Tucker. So yeah, and then we even listened to like African tin flute music because Dad liked the sound of it, and like Nora Jones. So really, we listened to a lot of different music.
I believe you started writing songs at the age of 12. What do you remember of those very early songwriting efforts? What was inspiring a 12-year-old Camille to write?
I can't really remember me thinking like I'm going to write a song. I think I just did it anyway, and I think I kind of just did it for fun. And I always loved writing. I loved English, and at one stage I wanted to be an author, and I was always just writing all these little stories and poems. And when I went back in my old songwriting book, I found this old one from when I was about 10 to 12, and I've gotten all these songs, and they were absolutely horrible, like really, really bad songs, and they're all called like Rapunzel and Let Your Hair Down and Stomp Your Feet and all of those kind of things. But yeah, and I saw a note where I had written 10 more songs to write until I can do an album. And yeah, so I think I didn't even realize how long I actually had been songwriting until I found that book, because I couldn't really actually remember doing that as a kid.
Now, you spent some time studying at the JMC Academy in Brisbane. What did you take mainly out of that experience?
It was amazing. Pretty much, it was really everything we learnt. There was a lot of new stuff that we learnt, but a lot of it was stuff that you already do naturally as a songwriter and that you do and what we call like our natural instinct. And we kind of learnt what those things were called and what they do. So really it was like a really good way to learn if you want your music to make someone feel like this, then this is the technique that you use. So it was really good in kind of refining, and so you can choose and pick more what you want to put in your songs rather than just whatever comes out.
Did you have songwriting heroes?
I did, yeah. A big one for me was, I love Chuck Berry, but obviously Bob Dylan. I think every songwriter loves Bob Dylan. His lyrics are just amazing. And I also really liked Paul Kelly. The Beatles were really cool. But yeah, I think Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen are some of my top songwriters.
Now, I'd be willing to bet that the question you've probably been asked most since this album was released was the unique way that you funded it by selling some bulls from the farm. I guess it's hard for interviewers not to go there because it's such a unique story, but did you consider any other forms of funding, or crowdfunding, for example?
I did think of crowdfunding, but for me personally, I don't know, like it kind of just didn't really feel like it sat right with me. Like I don't have any problem with other people doing it at all. I think it's great, but just me personally, I kind of felt like when you're a business, like other businesses, you kind of I try to look at myself as a business, and usually you're the person who has to invest in that. And I think when I had the cattle, I was lucky enough where I was able to get that money elsewhere. But if not, I probably would have looked at that. But yeah.
Well, let's talk about this record. I guess with the debut, it's a one-off opportunity to make a statement and present a portrait of the type of artist you are, a first impression, if you like. Was that very much on your mind when you were putting this album together?
Yeah, it was. I think when I did the album, I really kind of wanted to make a statement. And you hear a lot of albums that are like, they're really nice to listen to, but I really wanted my first kind of entrance into the music industry to be a bit more like, wow, her songs just aren't about love and heartbreak. There are a lot of them that are about that, but that are a bit different, and it's the music's different. And I kind of wanted to create my own, almost like my own genre. I didn't really want to follow in anybody else's kind of steps. I kind of just wanted to do my own thing. And that was kind of scary too, because I was like, oh, like it might not be received well because like not many people are doing kind of music like this. But yeah, I guess I kind of just wanted to make a bit more of a statement, even if that meant kind of staying out on my own for a little bit.
One thing I do like about the album is the overall sound. It's not overproduced or overpolished. It's by any means, it's real and honest. Was that also a priority for you?
Yeah, definitely. When I was in the studio with Shane, I always had this word, it was pretty, and I didn't want it to sound pretty. And as a person, I love pretty things. I love pretty picnics and stuff like that. But yeah, I just didn't want my music to sound like pretty and perfect and polished, and just like when you hear some songs and they sound amazing and I love them, but everything is just so perfect and shiny almost, and like everything's just so well produced. But I kind of really wanted to capture the music, like if there's a little break in your vocal or like the guitar's a bit raspy, like you keep all of those things in there, because that's kind of what makes the music, like you feel it, and it's a bit probably more like emotional, I suppose. But yeah, I wanted to keep it real and stripped back.
Did I read right, it was actually all recorded in 2019?
Yeah, so everything was recorded in 2019 except for Holding Pattern. Right.
So I'm guessing in a non-COVID world it would have been released a lot sooner?
Yeah, so we were thinking of releasing it in 2020. We didn't release it in 2019 because we thought we would release a few more singles, which definitely seems to be the way that it's going a lot now in the industry. Everyone seems to be releasing a lot of singles. But yeah, we were going to release the album 2020, and then obviously COVID kind of put a little bit of a halt to that. So we held off for a year, and then here we are now.
So I'm guessing if that's the case, and these songs are at least 2 years old now, you must have quite a storage vault of new songs ready to be recorded.
Yeah, I do, and it's exciting, and it's almost kind of weird releasing an album where the songs are so old, and it's almost like the music I'm writing now is pretty different. So I'm still very much along the same lines, but yeah, it's weird, but it's also really exciting.
Yeah, with your country upbringing, I guess most people wouldn't be surprised if you were writing cliched country songs, but you don't go there at all. That type of country music never really been your thing?
I like listening to it, but I guess for me, all that stuff was like my normal life. Like I did that every day. So it never really appealed to me to write about that because that was just like my normal kind of go-to. And I've also been like a lot more interested in like the blues music as well. So I think I've always kind of stuck more to that blues folk side rather than the country side.
Now, the talents of Shane Nicholson, both as an artist and a producer, are well known. And for you personally, what was it about the way that Shane works that made him the perfect producer for you?
Well, I actually grew up listening to Shane. I am a huge fan of him. He's been one of my idols, and I was writing the album, and I was actually listening to a lot of his music as I was writing it. So yeah, he has been a really big influence. So, and then I found out he produces as well. And I thought, I'm like, well, that's a bit far-fetched. Like, that's never going to happen for a nobody artist. Just randomly sending Shane Nicholson an email and be like, hey, like, don't be so stupid, Camille. But then I thought, I'm like, oh, well, what the heck? Like, the worst that can happen is that he'll say no, or he just won't reply. And then the best thing that can happen is pretty much what's happening now. So then, yeah, I'm glad looking back now that I kind of had the courage to just send that email off.
You got him at a good time. I actually spoke to Shane last week about his new album, and he was saying that he's been absolutely swamped with production work since COVID hit. So you beat the rush.
Yeah, exactly. I might have to try and get in with him soon and book myself in for the next one.
Did anything about working with him surprise you? Did you have like a preconceived notion what it would be like working with him as a producer? And did he pretty much live up to that? Yeah,
well, I didn't really know what to expect because I'd never done any kind of recording before. So I was completely new. But I guess for me, the most kind of the thing that really stuck out was obviously when he has been my idol for a long time. You kind of obviously you idolize them, and then just meeting him, and he's such a really nice, humble person, and we just got along really well. It was really nice to kind of meet him for who he is as a person as well, and kind of put all that professional, the music side away. I think that's probably what I took out of it the most, just of how nice of a person he was. And I really trusted him, like you have to in those situations. But I trusted him more with my songs after getting to know what a great guy he is.
Looking through the songs on the record, would you say there's an overall theme that sort of reappears during the course of the album?
Yeah, well, I think musically it's very much like the bluesy, gospel, folky with the little bits of country in there. And then lyrically, I talk a lot about the devil in this album. And the lyrics are a bit darker as well. Like Humming Chain is about African-American slavery, and then we have Deal with the Devil and Devil's Drink. And then 6 o'clock, I'm talking about having a drink at 6 o'clock in the morning. My parents were like, Camille, what is going on? But I think it's kind of like an overall theme that it's just, I don't know. Well, it's just like my diary entry of my life up to date of when I wrote those songs. So I guess it's just going through the motions of having your heart broken and kind of get over it. And yeah.
You mentioned the bluesy gospel feel. One track where that really stands out is Deal with the Devil. obviously they were both forms of music you had a lot of exposure to growing up.
Yeah, we loved listening to all that, like the Deep South, Louisiana kind of music. And I've always been so fascinated in that. And when I wrote Deal with the Devil and actually Humming Chain, I was listening to a lot of that music at the time. So, yeah, I love that music.
Relationships seem to figure in the subject matter of your songs, which is not unusual for songwriters. Writing songs about a relationship gone wrong, can it be something of a personal therapy at times?
Yeah, definitely. I think it can kind of almost be like a bit of a closure kind of thing, especially if you have been in a relationship and it ends and you haven't had any closure. I think as a songwriter, you can kind of express yourself and you write that song and you think, right, well, that's it now. I can move on.
6 O'Clock's a wonderful track, and Shane joins you on that one, and it works perfectly as a duet, but I believe you didn't write it with that in mind.
Yeah, it was never supposed to be a duet, and it wasn't until in the studio Shane said, oh, like usually as a new artist it's a good idea to get someone else on board as a duet. And we said, well, we don't have any duets, and we went through and had a look at them, and it kind of really jumped out because it's really talking about two people kind of sitting down together being like, all right, well, timing was never right, but so let's just call it quits and move on. So really it worked out perfectly as a duet.
Now, as you mentioned earlier, actually, a lot of people, the trend these days seems to be to drop a few singles before you put the album out. What criteria did you use in choosing the songs that you released beforehand? Was there any pre-plan put into that?
With the first single, Humming Chain, that was just kind of personally one of my more favourite songs. It was also the most recent song that I'd written in the album. So I think I really just wanted to release that because it felt new. And I think too, like when you're releasing to radio, you've got to pick like your more upbeat songs. And yeah, and so we always wanted I Know I'm Hard to Love to be a single, but we knew that it would have to be a later single. So I guess it was almost like we kind of eliminated a few things, and then that's how we decided. But Holding Pattern was a bit more of a strategic release because we were running out of singles on my album. So we were like, well, we need another single, and maybe we can team up with someone else and do a duet, and so we can both break into each other's kind of audiences as well.
Little History is one which I believe was sparked by your dad's suggestion to write a drinking song. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, Dad loves to remind me of this. He's like, I was the inspiration of this song. But yeah, Dad had been listening to all these songs I was writing. He's like, Camille, you're a country music singer and you haven't written a drinking song. Like, you can't even call yourself a country music artist. Write a drinking song. So then I wrote this song, and pretty much it's just about letting go of what's happening at the moment and just having a few drinks with your friends and just letting go of all that stuff and worrying about it tomorrow. And it was funny, when I wrote that song, that's all it was about, really. And then when we released it, it was right in the middle of COVID, so it almost took on a new meaning with COVID then, to kind of take a breath in and just worry about it tomorrow. Yeah.
So overall, have you found a best time of day for writing that works for you, or a certain frame of mind that you need to be in to be able to sit down and create?
Well, usually I like to write every day, and usually I like to do it at the same time every day. But when I'm not doing that, I think at night time is definitely when I'm the most inspired, and I always need to have like a candle going or incense. Like I don't know why, but I just can't seem to write without one of them going. It's usually a candle. So I know one time when I was at uni, I had an assignment to do and I had to write the song, and then I realised my candle had burnt out and I had none left, and I was like, oh no, I can't write a song without my candle. And it turned out it was a pretty bad song. So now I always make sure I have a candle with me everywhere.
Have candle will write. I like it.
Yeah.
And just before I let you go, I know it's pretty tough to make plans at the moment. I know you were due to be down here next month with Shane. I assume those plans are all on hold now?
Yeah, they're all on hold. So I think the tour up until kind of mid-September we've all had to postpone. So yeah, not really sure what the plans are now. I guess just cruise around and go with the flow. I suppose that's all we can do.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on a wonderful debut album. It may have been financed by Bulls, but there's no bull about it. It's as honest an album as I've heard this year. It's a wonderful way to start your recording career.
Oh, thank you so much.
Excellent.
Awesome. Yay.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Camille. And I hope your result comes back okay. Much. I'm sure it will.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Okay. Take care. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.